Namaste. Welcome to this session. We are dealing with various classifications of bhakti, which are there for us to understand the characteristics of various kinds of bhaktas and various kinds of bhaktis. So, we had just come to mention the classification that comes in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita mentions, in fact, the Lord mentions, Bhagavan mentions, Artha Jignasu, Artharthi Jnani are the four kinds of bhaktas. And of course, there are four kinds of bhaktis. Artha means when a theistic person he is in utter difficulties, problems, calamities, that he becomes helpless, hapless, hopeless, and then she take recourse in his personal deity. Oh God, please help me out. No one can help me. I myself cannot be helping myself. And in such a state of mind, there is what appears is called artata. So he is in enormous pain, enormous sorrow, enormous agony, enormous helpless condition, hopeless condition, hapless condition. So try to understand the mindset of such a person. Then that bhava that comes up, that bhava is called artata. And those who believe in God, those who realize that the God is only resort. So in helpless, hapless condition, it is differently perceived. When these things are absent, not that one is in such a condition, still they are theistic people, there is theistic inclination, but then a bhakti doesn't really come forth blazingly. So that is artata. The other one, the second one is called jignasu. This jignasu wants to know divinity in his own intelligence. He wants to make the divinity the subject matter of intelligence. Therefore, he looks into sciences. He goes into shastras and goes for very deep study of shastras for intellectual conceptualization of Bhagavanta. So basically, in his intellectuality, rationality, reasoning, this person wants to know about God and divinity. So what is his dimension of whatever realization he gets for with respect to divinity is one kind. So between artharthi and jignasu, you can see the difference. I'm sorry, the artha and jignasu, the dimension of realization of God or divinity will be one when it is artha bhakti, and in jignasu it will be different because it goes through various Puranas, various Shastras, the Vedanta, Dharma Granthas, Adhyatma Granthas, Moksha Shastras, and then he has a intellectual pursuit. Therefore, it will be differently discerned. The object or object of divinity will be differently discerned. So that's the second kind, Jignasu. Then comes Artharthi. The Artharthi would be on Ahik plane or Paralaukik plane or a Paramarthik plane. He wants to have the best kind of ideal condition in Ahika plane, that is worldly life, mundane life. So he is trying to take help of divinity for his mundanity. Ishta prapti, anashta nivruti, dhanadhanya samruddhi, ayur arogya prapti, and then getting rid of the problems that come in worldly life. So also in Paralaukik life. Paralaukik means hereafter. So he wants also the good hereafter. He doesn't want good here, but hereafter as well. That is posthumously. So he wants to know in what way the God would be of any help posthumously post this incarnation, when I would be transmigrating to other planes. So he wants to know how the God would come handy, what would be the role of divinity. And Paramarthik. Paramarthik means the highest plane of leading a life, like what you call a spiritual life, adhyatmic life. So he wants to know, and he wants to see how he will have utkarsha, evolvement, in all the planes of life. And that's why he would be worshipping divinity. For now, for here, for hereafter, and for then, and also in Paramartha, in spirituality. So, such bhakta is called Artharthi. That means he looks beyond the life also. He looks at divinity from for beyond the life. So, see, understand how the bhakti bhava would be different. He knows that Ishvara is sarva bhishta phala pradata. Ishvara is sarva bhishta phala pradata. And then with all shraddha, he inculcates bhakti, imbibes bhakti. While now the last one, the fourth one is Jnani Bhakta. And the Jnani Bhakta is of course the supreme kind of Bhakta. That means he already has a Jnana. He knows what divinity is. He knows essentially, quintessentially what the divinity is, what Ishvara is, what Bhagavan is. And then understand the fabric of bhakti that he would be having. Having known him for what he is, his bhakti would be totally different. And this Jnani Bhakta is best described in Bhagavad Gita itself, in the 12th chapter. Because the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Bhakti Yoga Adhyay. And in Bhakti Yoga Adhyay, there are verses from 13 to 20. So, we need to look into these verses to understand what this Gnani Bhakta is. So, we will try to peep into this passage of Bhagavad Gita. These verses are thus very, very lyricized passage, nectarine in words and expressions. So Bhagwan describes Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukha sukhakshami संतुष्ट सततम योगी यतात्मा दृढ़ निश्चय मयि अर्पित मनोर्बुद्धिर्यो मद्भक्त समे प्रिय यस्मान्नो द्विजते लोको लोकान्नो द्विजते च यः हर्षामर्ष भयोद्वेगैः मुक्तो यः स च मे प्रियः अनपेक्ष शुचिर्दक्ष उदासीनो गतव्यथः सर्वारंभ परित्यागी यो मद्भक्त समे प्रियः यो न हृष्यति न द्वेष्टि न शोचति न कांक्षति शुभाशुभ परित्यागी भक्तिमान्य में समे प्रिया सम शत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्ण सुखदुःखेषु सम संग विवर्जितः तुल्य निंदा स्तुतिर्मौनी संतुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेत स्थिरमतिर भक्तिमान में प्रियो नरहा ये तो धर्म्यामृतम इदम यथोक्तम पर्युपासते श्रद्धाना मत्परमा भक्तो स्ते अतीव में प्रियः. This is that passage, and this passage tells us Adveshta sarvabhutanam, he who is free from any malice towards anyone, anything, and all the beings, whether human or subhuman or superhuman. He has, he is Adveshta, he has no malice. He has friendliness and compassion for all the people, the entire world, entire universe. He is rid of I-ness and mindness. He has no I-ness and mindness. Nirmama, nirahankaraha. Balanced in joy and sorrow. He is always completely in balance, equipoise, for his own sorrows and for his own joys. He has forgiving nature, and that is by nature to everyone, not partial, forgiving some and not forgiving some, which is usually the case of mankind. He is impartial there. He is ever contented. The discontent doesn't touch him at all. And he is mentally united with me, says Bhagwan. Nay, who has subdued his mind, senses, and body, has a firm resolve and has surrendered his mind and reason to me, says Bhagwan. That devotee of mine is dear one to me. Then, Yasmanu Dijate Loko Lokano Dvijate Jaya. He who is not source of annoyance to his fellow creatures and who is in his turn doesn't get vexed or annoyed with fellow creatures, is neither annoying nor gets annoyed, and who is free from delights and envy, perturbation, fear, is dear to me. Then anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gatavyatha. He who wants nothing, who is both internally and externally pure, and is clever, impartial, and has risen above all distractions, and who renounces the feeling of doership in all undertakings. That devotee of mine is dear to me. That he who neither rejoices, nor hates, nor grieves, nor desires, and who renounces both the good and the evil actions and is full of devotion is dear to me. He who is alike to friends and foes, as a matter of fact, he has no friends and foes. He is one and the same to everyone. He is as well as one and the same in honor and ignominy. So the honor or ignominy doesn't touch him. Who remains balanced in heat and cold, pleasure and pain, and all other dualities of experiences, and is free from attachment, he who takes praise and reproach alike. So somebody praises him or somebody reproaches him, it doesn't really touch him. It doesn't shake him. And is given to contemplation and contented with any means of subsistence whatsoever, entertaining no sense of ownership and detachment in all respect of his dwelling place, and full of devotion to me, that man is dear to me. That bhakta is dear to me. Finally, those devotees, however, who partake in the disinterested way, nishkamatva, this nectar that I have mentioned here in 12th chapter and also in the entire Gita so far. So this nectar of pious wisdom set forth above, endowed with the faith and solely devoted to me, they are extremely dear to me. So this is how Jnani Bhakta is described by Bhagwan himself. And of course the whole 12th chapter for this purpose should be understood, to really understand the bhakti that we are speaking about. Because that's a chapter on Bhakti Yoga itself. So that's how it is that much important. So this is how the Jnani Bhakta has been described by Bhagwan himself. So we don't have to ponder over it, don't have to have our own imagination and thought. It has been mentioned in his own words. See, by bhakti and this Ishwar Pranidhana, all obstructions, all vignas. Vigna means obstruction. It could be in our worldly life, mundane life, personal life, or transcendent aspect of life. What we call as antaraya, yoga antaraya. They are also removed. They are also weeded out by bhakti. And I recall Bhagwan himself declaring this. Tesham eva anukampartham aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami. I destroy with anukampa, with my compassion, to all those who are in spiritual pursuit. I remove their ajnana, I remove their tama, I destroy their tamas, I destroy their ajnana. How? Atmabhavasthe jnanadipena bhasvata. Atmabhavasthe jnanadipena bhavata. I mean within their hearts, within their self. By being within themselves, by my effulgence of jnana, the jnana form of effulgence, I destroy the tamas, I destroy the ajnana. So understand how important Bhagwan is for us in pursuit of yoga. And see, very aptly, Patanjali himself brings Ishwar Pranidhana in this context as well. Antaraya Bhava. So, Patanjali also has this purport in Pranava Japa. The Pranava Japa, at least, it will work on mitigating antarayas or weakening antarayas. Now, antarayas have been listed in Yoga Sutra, you should recall. The sutra is quite famous and popular. व्याधिस्त्यान संशय प्रमाद आलस्य अविरति भ्रांति दर्शन अलब्ध भूमिकत्व अनवस्थितत्वानिश्चित्त विक्षेपाः ते अंतराया दुःख दौर्मनस्य अंगमय जयत्व श्वास प्रश्वास गति विच्छेदाः. So he has listed all these in his sutra. And why? And where does the list come? It is coming in topic of Ishwara Pranidhana. So also I recall from Vishnu Sahasranama, from the prologue of it and epilogue of it. Rogardo muchyate rogat bandho muchyeta bandhanat. This is what every mortal is looking for. Rogarto muchyate rogat. So by japa, by bhakti, by nama, mere nama, may not be bhakti, but just by nama sadhana, one will be enfranchised from diseases, vexations, troubles, the diseases of body and diseases of mind. From there to bandho muccheta bandhanat, the bound one will be enfranchised, liberated. So this, what the mere nama would be doing. So we can understand how much the nama sadhana, bhakti, japa are so important in Adhyatma. There is no Adhyatma without this. Engrave this in your mind. Your Adhyatma cannot be just a physical pursuit, mental pursuit or intellectual pursuit, understanding and the intellectual capacity to understand, etc. This is such a core aspect. Nama japa, nama sadhana, bhakti. So that was the classification that came in Bhagavad Gita. So we were citing few of these classifications. Now with Bhagavad Gita, one cannot afford to forget the last and final statement that comes in Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharman parityajam mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. So Bhagavan says, worry not. You surrender completely unto me and I will redeem you of all your sins and also will grant you the mukti, the moksha, the nirvana. So here it is Charama Shloka of Bhagavad Gita. And there he comes to mention Sharanagati. Sharanagati is a form of bhakti, or perhaps the supreme form of bhakti, culminative form of bhakti is called Sharanagati. So we need to look at this concept of Sharanagati. Interestingly, Bhagavad Gita starts very interestingly from what is called as Prapanna, Prapatti. And it culminates, his advice culminates with Sharanagati. So it commences in the second chapter by Arjuna declaring that I am Prapanna. I am your Prapanna. And therefore, please help me to come out of these problems that I am in. And that's the commencement of Bhagavad Gita in true sense of the term. And then end of Bhagavad Gita is with Bhagavan Uvacha, which is this Charama Shloka. So it starts with Prapatti, or it starts with Prapanna, Arjuna declaring that he is Prapanna, and then it ends with Sharanagati. Now this has been picked up by Sri Vaishnavism, the Vaishnava Dharma, and therefore you will see a lot of influence of bhakti in Vaishnava Dharmas, Vaishnava Vedanta, Vaishnava Pantha, more so in Sri Vaishnavism. So let's look at these two verses where in one sense quintessentially Bhagavad Gita commences and where it ends. So let's cite these two verses. We need to understand the background for this wonderful celestial song to appear, the Arjuna's condition. Arjuna is in a miserable condition. He is really in a hapless and hopeless condition. So let me give you a little enunciation. In the second chapter, in the first chapter and also second chapter, we realize that Arjuna is in a deep plight. He is really in helpless, hapless, hopeless condition. So looking at this, his condition, which is described in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan says, Arjuna, how has this infatuation overtaken you at this odd hour? You are on the battlefield. And now you are coming out with all these kinds of cries. You yourself opted for battle. And now on the battlefield, why is it that infatuation has overtaken you? It is shunned by noble souls. Neither will it bring heaven nor fame to you. It's so unfortunate that in the very battlefield you are coming with this kind of psychosis, that I won't fight the battle, I don't want to encounter my brothers and my elders and my grandsire, etc., my teachers. Yield not to this unmanliness. Arjuna, this is unmanliness. Arjuna, ill does it, it has become ill of you. Shaking off this paltry faint-heartedness, stand up, Arjuna. You are really scorcher of enemy, and what has happened to you now? So Arjuna says, Krishna, shall I fight Bhishma, Drona with arrows on the battlefield? They are worthy of deepest reverence. How will I fight them? It is better to live on alms, beg for alms and live on alms in the world without slaying these noble elders. I should opt to be to be a beggar rather than slaying these noble elders, because even after killing them, we shall after all enjoy only blood-stained pleasures in the form of wealth and kingdom and all sorts of enjoyments. We do not even know which is preferable for us, to fight or not to fight, nor do we know whether we shall win or whether they will conquer us. Those very sons of Dhritarashtra, killing whom we do not even wish to live. They are after all our cousins. Then with my very being tainted by the vice of faint-heartedness and my mind puzzled with regard to sense of duty, he says, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. I am asking you, requesting you, beseeching you, tell me that which is decidedly good for me. I am totally lost. I just can't make out what is really right and wrong, what is good and not good. I am your disciple, Shishyastveham. Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. Prapanna. I am your disciple and not just a disciple. Prapanna. Prapanna is what we will be seeing when we see the definition of Prapanna. It's a form of bhakti. So I pray you to instruct me, and I put myself into your hands. That is prapatti. I put myself in your hands. Please tell me, what should I do? That is what the prapanna is. And that is how the Bhagavad Gita commences. This is the 7th verse of the 2nd chapter, where it says Shishyastveham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. And then comes the glorious instruction of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita instruction commences thereafter, after he discloses or after he admits, I am your Shishya and I am in your hands. I totally surrender into your hands. You guide me. So that's how Bhagavad Gita commences, really, in one sense. So it commences with the prapanna, which is, I said, to be totally in the hands of divinity. And then it ends with Sharanagati in the 18th chapter. So see, it begins with Prapatti and ends with Sharanagati. And the Prapatti, Sharanagati are so core principles of Sri Vaishnavism or the Vedanta that was preached by Srimad Ramanujacharya. So we now come here to understand what is this Prapatti and Sharanagati. What is the Sharanagati, which is a definition that comes in Pancharatra, in Bharadwaja Samhita of Pancharatra. Anukulasya sankalpaha pratikulasya varjanam rakshishyati iti vishwaso goptrutvam varnam tatha atmanikshepaha shadvidha sharanagatihi. Sharanagati shadvidha. We saw Navavida Bhakti, the Shadavida Bhakti in earlier session. Now here we are going to look at Shadvidha Sharanagati. Sharanagati means, in simple words, complete and total surrender. What is the meaning of this passage that comes in Narayana Dharma, Bhagavata Dharma, Vaishnava Dharma, Pancharatra Dharma, in Bharadwaja Samhita? The meaning is Anukulasya sankalpaha pratikulasya varjanam. Whatever is anukula to divinity is to be accepted wholeheartedly. And whatever is pratikula to divinity is to be given up. Whereas we mortals, we look for what is anukula to us. What is propitious to us, we embrace it, we go after it. And then what is pratikula to us, we abandon it. This is how we mortals are making our guiding principle of life. Let me see what is propitious to me and what is not propitious to me. Go after that is propitious, go after and embrace it, what is propitious, and then kick it away, discard it, what is not propitious. Whereas here, Sharanagata is saying, whatever is anukula to divinity will be my sankalpa. And whatever is pratikula to divinity will be varjana. It will be given up. So, it is not our paristhiti that should be anukul, pratikul, that is looked at and taken care of. It is what is anukula to Bhagwan and what is pratikula to Bhagwan is considered, and then the measures are taken. So that's the first lakshana, adya lakshana of Sharanagati. And well, to be on this path, then you require shaurya, dhairya, all these things. And then we have to look at this. What is the shaurya? What is the valor? What is the courage required to be adhering to this unique path of Sharanagati, that is embracing what is anukula to divinity and to discard, give up what is pratikula to divinity. Now this you will be able to cite in Bhakti Charitra. Anukula sankalpa, then you will see that in the life of Prahlada. Prahlada, if you read the life of Prahlada, he was going for this. And then Pratikulasya Varjanam, you will see in the life of Vibhishana. Vibhishana kicked away his ancestral glory, ancestral riches, and he kicked those and joined Rama. Because that was against divine's wish. The life with Ravana, life in Sri Lanka was against the wish of divinity. So he kicks those and comes and joins the fold of Sri Rama. That is Pratikulasya Varjanam. While Prahlada, Anukulasya Sankalpaha. His father had been harassing. Hiranyakashipu was harassing Prahlada with a very kind of harassment. Yet he did not leave the name of Narayana. His father did not want his son uttering the name of Narayana because he was from Asura family. He was son of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was sworn enemy of Bhagavan. He was not tolerating the name of Narayana. He wanted him not to do that, but this child would not leave it. Because that is most fond for divinity. And therefore, he stuck to that. So, Anukulasya Sankalpaha, he decided. And then you will see the enormous valor that he had to have and enormous courage that you had to have. Being a Asura, to be away from Asuric tendencies. So, Prahlada and Vibhishana tell us about that. Vibhishana kicked his own race and then came out of it. The third Lakshana, so these are two. The third Lakshana is Rakshati iti Vishwasaha. That he will protect. Once we go by his will, he will be our protector. We don't have to bother about obstacles, obstructions, any calamities. We don't have to bother. He is going to protect us. So that's the Dhrudha Vishwasa and Shraddha. Rakshati iti. That he will be protecting us. He protects us. He has been protecting. He will protect. He is protecting. This belief, strong belief, is the third aspect. This you will cite in Gajendra Moksha Prakaranam. That's a very fascinating topic, episode that comes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Gajendra Moksha, that elephant which is in the lake, which has plucked the lotus to be offered to divinity, and there comes a crocodile, and then grips his legs and holds his back leg into his jaws, from where one cannot escape at all. Once you are in the grip of crocodile's jaws, it is impossible to escape. So elephant would not have escaped at all. But then he, in his bhakti for Narayana, praised Narayana in elephant language, with elephant's words. And then Narayana appears, accepts his lotus, and kills the crocodile. So that's the Rakshati iti bhava, Rakshati iti vishwasa. And you look at that prayer of elephant, where he prays, he said, whosoever is the protector of this world, please protect me. And he is protected. So Gajendra Moksha is a wonderful episode to tell us about this third aspect. And he completely surrenders. He knows that there is no way out. When I am in the grip of a crocodile's jaw, there is no way to escape. So that's the Rakshati iti Vishwasa. He is our last resort, only resort. That's the belief, that's the Shraddha, that's the faith. Then in the Draupadi Vastraharanam of Mahabharata, you come across this. So Draupadi was also saved by Bhagwan Shri Krishna in Patavardhana avatar. That is called Patavardhana avatar. She could not be unrobed at all by Dushasana. Then that is the fourth. Then Atma Samarpana. That example is Ahilya to Sri Rama. And the Taraka mantra, the Taraka Nama, Taraka mantra to be held unto oneself, very, very, very miserly, and not to disclose it, is the Goptrutvam that is seen in Dhruva's life. The tiny tot of Dhruva, the child, the baby who is pronouncing, maintains the Ashtakshari mantra in complete secrecy. So that these are Sharanagati aspects. So one who takes Sharanagati is also called Prapanna. When one is Sharanagata, the Sharanagata doesn't has to bother about Matru Dharma, Pitru Dharma, Bhratru Dharma. No dharma will bound him, because everything is divinity for him. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva tvaya bandhu sakha tvameva. He is everything. Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi nivasa sharanam surut. This was also considered in our earlier session. So no dharma is violated once you take Sharanagati to Bhagavan. So no duty bounds Sharanagata. So there are no predicaments for Sharanagata. Because Bhagavanta, the Lord himself, is Mata, Pita, Dhata, Bharta, everything. So by being faithful to Bhagavan, he is faithful to every other relationship. That is how this Sharanagati is described in the Bharadwaja Samhita. Then about Prapatti, there is a wonderful definition which comes again in Narayaniya Dharma. Again, wonderful definition, listen to it. Bhagvat pravrutti virodhi swa pravrutti nivrutti prapatti. Very lyricized, poetic definition. Bhagvat pravrutti virodhi swa pravrutti nivrutti pravrutti. Whatever our own pravrutti, self pravrutti, swa pravrutti, which is against the Bhagavad pravrutti, to be nivrutta, to be giving up that, itself is prapatti. So to go by Bhagwan's desires and not go by one's desires. Banish one's desires which go against Bhagwan's desires. Nivrutti from the self-desires which are against Bhagavad desires is prapatti. And that's why very poetic definition, Bhagavad pravrutti virodhi swa pravrutti nivrutti prapatti. This translation of it will not give you this essence of it. So that is prapatti. And it is in Sri Vaishnavism that you will come to know about the tenets, the philosophy, the cult of prapatti and sharanagati. So those who are interested should look into Sri Vaishnava Dharma. See, otherwise, we have the idea of bhakta. The bhakta is by his sadhana, by what one does. We recognize that as bhakta. So Ramanuja makes it clear. Bhakta and prapanna are different. Bhakta and sharanagata are different. The bhakta takes recourse to sadhanas. We have to consider the Shadvidha bhakti, Navavidha bhakti. So there are certain means. Those means have to be adhered to. And that will lead towards bhakti yoga. Now we commoners characterize bhakti by certain symbols and signs such as Tal, Mal, Chiplya, Jap, Nam Jap, Gomukhi, Nama Sankirtan. So when these things are there, make a stark presence, we think that is bhakti. The bhakti is in the bhava. The bhakti is not in kriya. The bhakti is not in symbols. Anyway, we have so many cults of bhakti. In Maharashtra, we have Varkari Sampradaya. And that becomes Bhakti Yoga. Then in Gujarat, Rajasthan, there is Vraja Sampradaya. And then their kind of Bhakti Yoga there. In Bengal, Odisha, we have Chaitanya Sampradaya. That is called Bengal Vaishnavism. So they have their own bhakti, they have their own way of bhakti, they have their own bhakti yoga. In the south, in southern states, you have Vaishnavism and Sri Vaishnavism. The Vaishnava Sampradayas are 4 Sampradayas called Rudra Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya, and the Varkari Sampradaya. So various cults are there. Then we get even in Shaivism, we get various kinds of bhaktis. Then there is Shaiva Sampradaya, there is Ganapatya Sampradaya, there is Datta Sampradaya, there is Shakti Sampradaya, and they have their description of their own bhakti and their bhakti yoga. Now because of this assortment, there is a lot of confusion in very concept of bhakti. Sri Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya, then Varkari Sampradaya, then Vraja Sampradaya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sampradaya, Bengal Sampradaya. So many kinds of bhaktis are there, and therefore there is a lot of confusion in these various kinds of bhaktis. So much so that between Shaivism and Vaishnavism, some 1,000 years back, it was worst kind of conflict that Bharatvarsha had gone through. You can't imagine the enmity that they had between Shaivites and Vaishnavites. It was worse than inter-religious, interfaith conflicts. But that was some 1,000 years back. You can't be just imagining unless you really go into history of the bhakti. You will not really be able to imagine what was some 1,000 years back, and until about 200 years back, 300 years back, it still was a remnant. The Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Anyway, the point is that, because it is bhavanatmaka field, there is a lot of bhavana, then we have blind faith. When you have blind faith, then we tend to overlook. But we can't be overlooking these. When they come to surface, we notice, then we are confounded and dumbfounded. So this is what has happened to bhakti. Ramanuja makes it clear about bhakti, the bhakti yoga in Pancharatra concept of it and the Vedantic concept of it. He says now there is no bhakti yoga, and very rightly, with little analysis and inquiry we will come to know. Otherwise they believe that bhakti yoga is still there. Varakari Bhakti Yoga is there, then Braja Sampradaya Bhakti Yoga is there, Sri Sampradaya Bhakti Yoga is there, Rudra Sampradaya Bhakti Yoga is there, Brahma Sampradaya Bhakti Yoga is there. So various kinds of Bhakti Yoga are there, is what we believe in. But Ramanuja makes it clear. He says Bhakti Yoga is now no longer there. It is extinct. And therefore now what we have is only Sharanagati. Sharanagati and Prapatti are only the ways to be adhering to Bhakti. What is Bhakti Yoga? Ramanuja makes it clear in his Sri Bhashyam and in his Vedanta that there are certain Brahma Vidyas. There are 32 Brahma Vidyas which come in Upanishads. Brahmopasanas, such as Sadvidya, Bhrugu Vidya, Dahara Vidya, Purusha Vidya, Antaraditya Vidya, and so on and so forth. There are about 32 Vidyas. So when such Vidya is initiated, so one should be twice born for this initiation, initialization and initiation. And then these Vidyas are to be initiated by a Guru into a Shishya. And then only those can be practiced. Now that is not available today. Vedadhyan Parampara, we know what has happened to it. How far it has shrunk. Vedadhyan has shrunk to such a great extent that only it ends up in by hearting Vedas and chanting Vedas faultlessly. That's all. The Vedanta Parampara is gone. And that is only Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. The Bhakti Yoga is that which comes in Upanishads, while today what is available is only Sharanagati and Prapatti. And therefore he distinguishes between Bhakti Yoga and Sharanagati, which is also important distinction to be considered. In Sharanagati, there is surrender of oneself. Swatmarpanam. Swatmarpanam is characteristic to Sharanagati. Now what is the Swatmarpanam? Tena saurakshamanasya phale swatma vimuktata keshavarpana paryantahi atma nikshepa uchyate. The Bhagavanta should be considered unknown, anyonya, one without the second. Only resort, final resort, just the resort, only the resort. And then we should become Bhagavantadhina. We should depend upon him. That prakriya is called Swatmarpanam, Atmarpanam, Swatmabhararpanam. Therefore they have what the cult or practice called Bharanyasa. Bharanyasa means Bharanyasa. So all our weights of these gravities and duties, etc., they are all packed in a cloth and are offered at the feet of Bhagwan. That's why it is called Bharanyasa. Bhara means Bhara. Bhara means weight and load. So we are offloaded. We are offloaded by this Bhagavad Ayatta Vritti. To be totally depending upon Bhagavanta, we can be totally unloaded of all these duties, and that's why it is called Bharanyasa. Prapanna, Bharanyasa. These are the ways to be free from the gravities of our world. And after all, you can do that because Bhagavad Gita itself and Bhagwan himself declares Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Surut. I am only the support, only the support. Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam Nidhanam Bijamovyayam. And therefore he says, surrender unto me, Sarvadharman Parityajam, because I am capable of being surrendered unto, because I will take care of everything. So that's how Sharanagati has come in Bhagavad Gita, Prapatti has come in Bhagavad Gita. So we will now continue to discuss about this Prapatti and Sharanagati, because there is much more to really understand and realize. And that will be in our next session. Enough for this session. Namaskar all of you.